It's Denise Howell, and I'm taking the week off this week. But don't worry, you're in great hands with a rock star panel of some of the best tech lawyers out there, including Professor Eric Goldman, Venkat Balasubramani, Jonathan Bailey, and guest host Evan Brown. They're going to talk about Google's cloud music service, sue a hacker, lose a network, the latest on the DMCA Safe Harbors, and lots more next on This Week in Law.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiL.
Bandwidth for This Week in Law is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is TWiL, This Week in Law with Denise Howell and this week guest host Evan Brown. Episode 111 recorded May 13, 2011. Tat Wars. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. For a free 14-day trial, go to squarespace.com/TWiL and be sure to check out their annual plans for savings of up to 20% off. And by Trim Tonic, the natural appetite suppressant tonic that takes the edge off of being hungry. Visit braintonic.com for more information. Enter coupon code TWIT for a 20% discount.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 111 of This Week in Law. I am Evan Brown. I'm an attorney in Chicago, and I write the Internet Cases blog at internetcases.com, and I am filling in for Denise this week. She is out, so I've assembled a great panel of three of the smartest guys out there when it comes to this stuff about law and technology. So we're going to have a great time talking for the next hour or so with Eric Goldman, Jonathan Bailey, and Venkat Balasubramani. Eric, how's it going out in California?
As usual, it's another beautiful day here in California.
That's great to hear, Eric. Many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Professor Goldman's work. He is a professor of cyber law and intellectual property at Santa Clara University Law School of Law out there, and directs the High Tech Law Institute. What's going on? What's the big news out there in Santa Clara these days?
The big news is that we're on summer break, so I'm loving it.
Oh, that's great. Any seminars or anything coming up this summer? Anything we should know about?
I have a long list of activities, actually. I continually add stuff, so I have to post that online. I won't do the spamming here. How about that?
Yeah, that's great. Venkat, up in Seattle, how are things up there?
No complaints. Surprisingly nice day. We've had some really terrible weather, and it's nice to have a break. So, like every other cliched Seattleite conversation, I'll have to throw in a little bit about the weather over here.
Right. Yeah. I guess it'd be perfect if you hold up a cup of coffee then too, with the rainy weather.
Exactly.
Well, he's got the flannel.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to see Eddie Vedder in the background here in a little bit.
Yep.
There we go.
Nice to be on, everyone.
Yes. Venkat is one of the founders. He's an attorney at Focal PLLC. So how's the practice going? How long have you been had the doors open there at Focal?
For about a little over 2 years, and things are going great. Just busy, which is bad, and obviously good. So I can't complain on that front.
Right. Well, it's great to be talking with you. And now going down to Louisiana, we have Jonathan Bailey from Plagiarism Today. How are you, Jonathan?
Doing all right. The Mississippi River's above flood stage. It's pouring rain. I think if we start to run out of a bead of beer, we have to send in the National Guard.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's for sure.
It's pretty interesting times here in New Orleans.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you're definitely sporting the pirate look all the way around, which I have always found, the Jack Sparrow look and everything. I have always found it to be quite the irony or quite the paradox that you write a blog and you focus so much on plagiarism, but yet you carry the pirate moniker so well. What's up with that?
I was actually very interested in pirates long before I ever got interested in copyright. For example, even before I was really into plagiarism today, I went to the Pat Croce's Pirate Museum in Key West. Previously, when I was in high school, I could identify, I think it was 25 different pirates by their flags alone. So I've always had a thing for pirate lore even before I got into copyright, and I've just reveled in the irony ever since. So there you go.
Yeah. Right on, right on. Well, glad you're with us today. I've been really excited about this conversation. We're all familiar with each other's work. The stuff we write, you guys all write really, really great stuff. So let's start off talking about something that could fairly be characterized as breaking news, at least in these contexts. I want to give a shout out to Jeffrey Howell, who likes the This Week in Law page over on Facebook. He posted a link last night that comes from, I guess it's from one of the New York Times blogs. Yeah, the Media Decoder, which is one of the New York Times blogs. The news is that the record labels have settled with LimeWire, in this case that's been going on for years and years. And it looks like the short version of the story is that they have stopped they're in the trial, or the damages phase of the trial, figuring out how much money LimeWire and its founder Mark Gorton was going to owe. They were asking something like well over $1 billion, and it looks like they've settled it for substantially less than that, for about $105 million. So it's going to take care of this long ongoing lawsuit against this well-known P2P provider. I'm wondering what your reactions are to that, Eric. What do you think of this settlement? What should we make of it?
I've taken the position that peer-to-peer file sharing law in copyright is different from all other facets of copyright law. And so from that perspective, I don't know how much we learned. We learned that another P2P file sharing service is biting the dust. They're going to go out in a flame of glory. But I don't know that it teaches us a whole lot about anything else, either within the space of peer-to-peer file sharing or outside of it. I've been noting, and there hasn't been really great coverage of this. I've been noting that there's been just a string of rulings from the judge in anticipation of the damages trial. And there was a lot of really interesting rulings that came out that I think kind of got lost in the shuffle there. And so in some sense, I'm actually relieved that the settlement's taking place, because I'm hoping it's going to stop this string of rulings, many of which are probably not going to be all that favorable for some of the interests that I favor.
What do you think, Venkat? What was your reaction when you heard $105 million settlement?
I don't have a good sense of the economics of the record industry, but it seemed like a somewhat low number and probably a drop in the bucket for the record companies who are claiming, trillions and trillions of dollars in damages. So, I think they taught the company and its executive a lesson, and that they're going to litigate these claims vigorously. But at the end of the day, I don't really know what it means for the record companies as far as what they're going to do in the long term, and I'm most curious about that.
Good. Jonathan, how does this fit into the overall picture of piracy? LimeWire, of course, was with us for a long time, all the way back from 2000 when it was founded. How does this play into the whole picture of piracy from your perspective, being one very focused on this whole, you may even characterize it as a scourge, the stealing of other people's work. Do you see any special significance in kind of the end of the LimeWire saga here?
Not really. As far as the purposes of piracy and piracy enforcement and whatnot, that end came some time ago when LimeWire was shuttered, and also when LimeWire was found to be liable. Going into this damages trial, it was really, at that point, we were just tying up loose ends more than anything. And at that point, I really didn't see why both sides were allowing this damages trial to go forward. It just didn't make a lot of sense. It seemed like neither side had anything to lose. LimeWire was almost certainly going to get hit with a huge amount of statutory damages, especially since the jury did not appear to be very sympathetic, and they were not doing particularly well in the first few days of the trial, it seemed. But the RAAA risked either A, getting an award that was absurdly high and caused a PR disaster and money they would never see, or getting an award that was incredibly low. It could have been as low as, I believe, like $7.5 million or something compared to the 105 they settled for. They risked getting a really low award, and that could have been seen as a major blow to the RAAA and their enforcement efforts. So neither side really had anything to gain in this damages trial. I'm amazed it got as far as it did.
Yeah, and I guess $105 million is not anything to, shake a stick at. If I had a check for $105 million, I wouldn't let it just fly out the open window in the car or whatever. So we're at a point now where we're seeing kind of what appears to be the end of the litigation based on that old peer-to-peer model, that started way back just, right after Napster. The technology that was at issue, with Grokster and Nutella and all those in that case that went up to the Supreme Court in 2005, that model of peer-to-peer technology and stuff like that. And we've seen more of an evolution into newer forms of file sharing, including, mainly BitTorrent. And so there's also this case that is still going on. It's been on appeal up in the Ninth Circuit. And I wanted to talk with you guys about this. In our show notes for today, Michael Barkley, he writes a great blog called IP Duck. And last Sunday, May 8th, he wrote a great post that outlines some of the goings-on in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals out there in California, where you are, Eric. A couple of important copyright cases involving secondary liability going up, in argument in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And one of those cases was Columbia Pictures versus Fung. And this, just to briefly lay the groundwork here, this case involves some similar theories and similar, analogical thoughts as what was going on in the Grokster case and also in the LimeWire case. The responsibility of the provider of the technology to allow these files to be shared and their responsibility in all of that. Eric, did you take a look at the comments about the oral arguments in the Fung case? And if you did, what's your reaction on that?
I did take a look at it, and the Fung case has made me nervous all along. The way that the entrepreneur was running that site definitely raised some yellow or red flags for anyone looking at the situation. And in my mind, this case has the potential to be another example of this peer-to-peer file sharing exceptionalism, where the court says this was all about BitTorrent. BitTorrent is bad by definition. Anyone who touches BitTorrent goes down, and so that's going to take down Fung and his websites accordingly. I was encouraged by the summary to suggest that the judges appear to be doing the kind of diligence we expect from judges, that they were actually looking closely at the facts and trying to figure out exactly how to apply the law to this particular set of facts. And so I'm hoping that this will not just be lost in the overall mania about the idea that BitTorrent is bad and this is a BitTorrent related site and therefore there's nothing more to talk about. That's what I got out of the summary, but we have to see what the judges actually say.
Venkat, do you share in that sentiment that this liability over, or this litigation over secondary liability is different in nature, kind of stands on its own in the whole body of copyright law? What Professor Goldman's saying, that it's so separate like that. What do you think along those lines?
I do agree with that, but I think that we might be starting to see Grokster infect things other than just peer-to-peer file sharing. And most interesting about the Fung case was that Google filed an amicus brief, and they made a couple of points, and I think it's a good read. And one of their points was about the relationship between inducement and the DMCA Safe Harbor. But the other kind of overarching point, and one of the reasons I think why they stepped in, was that, what's the effect on other technologies of a ruling in the Fung case, when Fung was saying, hey, all we do is offer a search engine or an ability to find files and connect users. And taken to the extreme, I can see how Google would be nervous about an adverse ruling on that case and about the district court judge's ruling. So I think it's definitely an interesting case, and the oral argument is worth a listen. And I think that ruling could tell us potentially about the extent to which Grokster is limited to peer-to-peer, or there's this separate exceptionalism for peer-to-peer, or whether the standard's going to spill over into other contexts.
Do you have anything in mind when you're thinking about what some of those other contexts might be? Because clearly peer-to-peer file sharing of music and of videos, gives us a great example for this or great context for this to have come onto the stage. What else do you have in mind, if anything, that could be affected? Or maybe what do you think Google has in mind with all of its concerns?
Well, I think part of Google's concern, I mean, there's another issue which Google brought up, is the effect on the overall architecture. But I think one concern is just that the evidence that the district judge pointed to in finding inducement wasn't really tethered to the architecture of the technology in that case. So the question is, could it even apply to search? And, I think you can look at the ICE domain seizures, and they're certainly arguing that sites that link to infringing content and allow users to access infringing content could themselves be liable for infringement. So that's potentially one example, but we'll see what the court says about that.
Right. Yeah, you bring up a great kind of subtopic there, one that's, we've talked about a lot on the show, this whole idea of bringing in the domain name as an issue, something to go after in copyright litigation. And Jonathan, I don't mean to sound like I'm picking on you, but I always hold you out as an exemplar of somebody who's very much, pro copyright ownership in the perspective that you take like this. And I want to, just kind of get your perspective on what you think of aggressive tactics, going after things like domain names, really taking a scorched earth approach to copyright litigation. What do you think about that?
I'm not necessarily against going after domains. One of the things that has been irritating me, and indeed a lot of others, is that there seems to be a lack of due process, or at least a lack of an appearance of due process on a lot of these seizures. And I don't want to get into a situation where, it's like a DMCA takedown type thing where you see infringement, boom, you grab the domain, you file a little form, you get the domain. The DMCA takedown process, for example, is meant to be very surgical, remove only the suspected infringing content. You don't necessarily yank an entire domain, don't take a whole site offline. And I would really like to see, a little more due process in this, because these domains are potentially very valuable pieces of property that people own, and it, to me, seems unfair to take them without at least some kind of, some means of arguing for and against it, some means of actually dealing with this in an adversarial environment. So that's my main thing right there, is the need for due process on these matters.
So as we know, the plaintiff who has really been, at least in the public's perception, the worst about this, what some might characterize as overreaching, these grabbing for domain names, is this company, Right Haven, that we've talked a lot about, I think even when you've been on the show before, Jonathan. So, and I know, Eric, you expressed in our email communications this week leading up to the show, and I know that you've posted several interesting things about developments with Right Haven's aggressive copyright campaign here. Why don't you tell us what's on your mind these days about Right Haven and what it's up to, and how the courts have reacted to its campaign of going after those who it thinks is infringing content online. What's up with that?
If you don't mind, I just want to make sure everyone is familiar with the few basics on Right Haven. So Right Haven is a company that has struck deals with various newspapers that allows Right Haven to acquire the copyright in specific newspaper articles. Right Haven then goes and sues people who have reposted those articles. The last few hundred have been allegedly only involving 100% reproductions of those articles, or photos or graphics, whatever asset they acquire. And Right Haven doesn't send takedown notices, so they simply go into court, they sue, but at some point in the process, they indicate that a settlement might be available if the target doesn't want to risk their domain name, their livelihood, their future children, and so on. And Right Haven, I should add, sued one of the companies I work with on the side. That matter has been settled, but I hate to sound like a a completely neutral source here. I was bitching about them before my client got sued. I'm bitching about them after it settled. So I think I've been consistent, but I should at least note that. And Righthaven has been just getting beaten up in court as judges really take a close look at what they're doing. And I think there's at least two different dynamics converging. Maybe three. One is that Righthaven has taken, in some cases, very aggressive positions. Things like demanding a domain name as a copyright remedy, which law simply doesn't support. The second is that I think that Righthaven's advocacy has not been the most skilled. And I apologize, it's just a biased statement. It's my assessment of the situation. I think that they have made some choices that many litigators kind of scratch their head and say, really? And then finally I think that the judges recognize that this is a mass copyright litigation effort, and they're skeptical about the merits of that. And so Righthaven's been getting pushback from various judges. No knockout blows the way that we might expect, or at least not. We won't know they're knockout blows until we see how the appellate courts handle it. But Righthaven's been taken on the chin in a variety of different formats. Judges have questioned the legitimacy of the copyright acquisition and whether Righthaven has standing. They've rejected Righthaven's argument that it gets the domain name. They have found fair use, and in some cases, in ways that I think are very aggressive applications of fair use, simply as ways of saying to Righthaven, no. So Righthaven's on the rocks. They have brought in some big guns. They've hired a very expensive New York attorney to come in and try and bail them out on the copyright assignment issue. They're appealing some of their cases. They're still filing new ones. So the Righthaven machine keeps going, but I think they're running into some perhaps unexpected snafus.
One of the most interesting snafus that they've run into is the perhaps unexpected yet pleasing success that defendants have had on the fair use argument. You alluded to that in your comments right there. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the courts have said, on that question of fair use when the defendant has come into court saying, Judge, this is really, this shouldn't be treated as something I should be liable for because I'm doing it this way and it's a fair use. What's going on there, Eric? What have the courts said?
Well, the first fair use ruling involved a snippet that the defendant had republished. I can't remember, let's say 4 out of 20 paragraphs or something on that order. Apologize, don't remember the exact stats. And that was, I think, a fairly easy case for judge saying, no, they just took a portion of it. What are you really bitching about? The more recent rulings have involved 100% reproductions, and we have two. One involves a newspaper article where a judge said, perhaps a little surprisingly, that 100% reproduction of a newspaper article, a very long one too, it's 33 paragraphs, was protected by fair use. And along the way, the court noted basically that there was no sympathy for Righthaven as a plaintiff because Righthaven's only business was to sue. It wasn't like there was a cannibalization of the newspaper's revenue stream. That wasn't an issue because the newspaper wasn't the plaintiff. It was only Righthaven in the plaintiff's seat, and therefore there was not really an easy way for the judge to measure how the defendant's activities hurt Righthaven's economic prospects. So that's going to be true in all of Righthaven's litigation. Now, the second ruling from the same judge just a couple weeks later involved a graphic as opposed to a newspaper article. And I think that judges treat visual images differently than they treat text. And so the judge didn't give the defendant a clean win on the fair use question with the graphic, but it still said, because Righthaven is in this business of suing people, I'm going to weigh the last factor, the effect on the market, in favor of the defendant as a matter of law. We're not going to talk about that one anymore. Righthaven, you're going to have to convince me on all the other factors if you think you're going to win. And so as long as that approach continues, Righthaven's fair use arguments are going to be extremely difficult to win. On the text arguments, it may not have a lot of success at all. It may only have a chance on the visual images.
Venkat, I'd like to direct the same question to you and to Jonathan, and it's picking up on this whole idea of Righthaven being in the business of doing what it does. It's not the author, the original author of these works, but it has acquired them purportedly by assignment, and it goes out and does this as a business. That is its business model, to sue on the copyright rights of somebody that originated with someone else. Venkat, does that mesh with your good senses and you know what the appropriate status of a copyright plaintiff should be?
Well, I'll add that I'm definitely one of those people who have scratched my head repeatedly when I see Righthaven's litigation tactics, and I haven't been involved in any Righthaven cases, but my initial instinct was this just looks like a debacle waiting to happen, and so it's easy to say it's definitely comforting to see courts take a close look at these cases. As to your question about the copyright assignment, I have to confess that I don't know the answer from a legal standpoint, but I would think a copyright plaintiff could conceivably assign its claims. There shouldn't be some sort of absolute bar to assigning your claims as a copyright plaintiff. But I think there was a ruling that Professor Goldman either blogged about or cited to that actually linked to or highlighted the actual agreement between Righthaven and the S&E, and there was definitely some confusion about whether it effectively did the job. So I wouldn't be surprised if everything is not up to snuff from a documentation standpoint.
Jonathan, looking to you, what do you think about that, this being the appropriate status or role of a copyright plaintiff? Is it the right thing to do if what we're doing is doing anything at all to stop works from being copied? What say you?
I'm no fan of Righthaven's approach at all, to be honest with you. I mean, my view on the matter has always been that copyright enforcement, and whether it be legal or other methods of enforcement, it's there to support a business model. It's not there to become the business model. And that's what Righthaven is trying to do, is trying to turn copyright enforcement and copyright litigation into a business model unto itself. And that makes me very, 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 very nervous and very upset. And I've watched this Righthaven debacle, and they've been losing on the fair use issues, and they've been basically making a mess of things pretty much since day one, more or less. And my big fear with Righthaven is a company like this that is so hated and so despised and is now sort of worn out its welcome with the judges. They come in and bring these arguments, and they may, especially considering they're obviously not having the best of luck as litigators, they might cause rulings to come about that could hurt other cases down the road or could affect, interests that I have down the road. So, I think, Righthaven is definitely way out of line with its tactics. And frankly, I'm kind of glad they're in a bit of a mess and getting sandbagged some.
Right. Hey, Jonathan. Hey, Jonathan, can I jump in?
Yeah,
Evan?
sure.
Yes, go ahead, Eric.
You mentioned about the business model of a copyright troll, and let's put that aside. But the sales pitch is that Righthaven's going to put money back in the pockets of newspapers. And what do you think about that? Do you think that there's merit to the idea that newspapers, one way or another, should be able to generate a little cash flow from litigation?
I think there's an argument that they should and they could, but part of it, is why not simply have your own attorneys and go in, as yourself in these matters, rather than pawning the rights off to a third party, perhaps poorly pawning those rights off on a third party. I think that's one element of the problem. That's one reason the judge mentioned there's no sympathy for Righthaven. And the other issue is using litigation purely as a means to earn revenue, especially off the statutory damages in these cases. It just feels a bit weird to me. There have been other attempts and other ideas. A company that I've done some work with in the past called Attributor had the Fair Syndication Consortium, where they were trying to do a thing where they were detecting all this news content in the web and getting a share of the ad revenue rather than filing takedown notices or filing lawsuits. I think there are other alternatives that are worth exploring first, that it doesn't appear that Stevens Media and the clients of Righthaven, the Denver Post, are willing to explore at this time.
I'd like to add something to that as well, which is, I mean, I'm fairly skeptical that the kind of reproduction or excerpts or blogging or what have you is contributing in any way to the downfall of newspapers. I think over the last couple of years, everyone is just coming to the conclusion that it's not about the paper. You have to change your business model, and I think Righthaven's choice of plaintiffs have really undermined any argument that it had to begin with, that this is contributing to the downfall of the newspapers. And I didn't believe it to begin with, but if you're looking at the defendants that they've sued, it's laughable almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like what you're saying there, Venkat, because they haven't done the best job choosing the plaintiffs, and as a result, they look a little bit silly, and they can't even get the support of somebody like Jonathan Bailey. What I would like to hear somebody say, or at least make the argument for, is that this model, by aggregating or consolidating the rights into one entity that can then go out and try to enforce those rights, maximizes a certain efficiency that in turn elevates the importance of the copyright right, and undoes the harm of infringement or illegal copying in a way that could not be accomplished by a bunch of individual lawsuits, filed by each of the publishers in each particular instance, by doing that individually. I mean, can anybody, just for the sake of argument, support that with any good sense? I'm just saying it. Can anybody support that with something rational?
Well, we've seen something like that in the music industry. The very licensing agencies that work in the music industry have done something kind of similar to what you're describing, but the emphasis is not so much on enforcement as it is licensing. I mean, these bodies do the occasional enforcement work, but that's not really the focus of them. So I'm stretching there. I apologize.
Hey, Evan. Hey, Evan.
Eric. Yeah.
I guess I remain deeply skeptical that there's any value to newspapers in trying to sue individual reader-type people who want to share with their audiences. Whether that's aggregated together or not, it just strikes me that that's not in the best interest of newspapers in the long run. That what they'll do is disenfranchise their community of readers to stop talking about them, to feel like they can't engage with the newspaper, and then the newspaper becomes irrelevant. The newspaper that nobody's talking about is actually probably not going to win in the long run. So it strikes me that it doesn't make any sense to aggregate or disaggregate. It strikes me that the big question for the newspaper has always been, why do you think this is going to be in a long-term interest? Even if you had net incremental profits from the litigation itself, you might still be losing money from the rest of your business because of the litigation. And I think those questions really need to be answered. One other thing I'll add is that going to Jonathan's point about if the newspapers really feel strongly about this, they ought to sue themselves. It seemed pretty clear to me that Stevens Media was trying to avoid the risk of being subject to a 505 fee shift, that if they were to bring the lawsuit and lose, they might have to write a check to the defendants for their attorney's fees. And it seemed like Stevens Media was trying to insulate itself from that exposure. And that's, I think, another good reason why newspapers might choose not to go out there and become copyright plaintiffs in any fashion. Because if they pick the wrong cases, it may end up costing them far more than they anticipated.
Good. Venkat, got anything to add?
Nope.
Good. Well, let's, Righthaven certainly gives us plenty to talk about, even if we're not talking about the newspapers themselves and, spreading the good word by word of mouth, about what the newspapers are doing in terms of their content. We can at least talk about them in terms of what they're doing outside of that content. So let's talk about another quick situation here where we can all sit around and wonder whether or not litigation or threats of litigation over copyright in that context makes sense. Did you guys see the article in the show notes for today from the Hollywood Esquire at HollywoodReporter.com about the guy who did Mike Tyson's tattoo trying to get an injunction stopping the release of Hangover 2 because of the way that tattoo appears on Ed Helms' character coming up in the movie. Jonathan, what do you make of this? Does this make any sense?
This is the type of question that gets asked by professors in law schools and law and ethics classes all over the country to get students thinking and to make them wonder aloud. This is a very strange case. I first read about it a while back, and it's always kind of baffled me, the issue of copyright in tattoos. It's sort of one of the strange side areas. As far as legality of it, he seems to have registered the work. He seems to have improper copyright. I don't know if the work itself is copyrightable, and I don't know if the use of it on Ed Helms is a derivative work, or perhaps, perhaps it's you can argue a fair use as a parody or whatnot. But it's definitely raises about 1,000 fascinating legal issues all in one tattoo. Pretty impressive work, actually.
Venkat, how do you address that question of fundamental weirdness of claiming copyright in something that's rendered on another's body?
That's a good question. I mean, instinctively, it seems like there is no bar to being able to copyright something like that. I mean, you can create a drawing, and the fact that it's tattooed on somebody's body tweaks the analysis a little bit, but I don't think completely undermines potential claims for copyright. I think there's the lawsuit. I was pretty skeptical of the lawsuit, and it looked like a pretty typical, let's try to file. I think he sought an injunction trying to prevent the movie from being released, which I think is pretty unlikely. And I'm hoping he actually owns or originally created the tattoo in the first place. I mean, it looks like tribal art, and maybe there's somebody out there in New Guinea or somewhere who comes along who says, hey, I was the one who created this originally. I put this on the block in Hawaii, and you came along, copied it, and I'm actually the owner. So I'm pretty skeptical of the lawsuit. We'll see what the court says.
Eric, is it fair use?
Before I answer that, let me just go back. So I'm the law professor that writes exams that come up with crazy hypotheticals like Jonathan was talking about. And I actually only write my exams from stories from real life, because they are so much crazier than anything I could ever come up with my limited imagination.
Very true, yes. Very, very true. Very true, Eric.
If you do a hyper-technical analysis of the situation, this could very well be copyright infringement. We have a copyrighted work, potentially, that is being copied, prima facie case. And then, as evidence you asked, does that mean we can turn over to fair use and find a defense on fair use? And on the one hand, we have a major commercial production, and there's lots of money on the table, and so it becomes awkward to say that it's fair use when we see all the money. On the other hand, we say this guy's tattoos, the commercial value of this tattoo is not going to be denigrated in any way. It's an editorial usage, not some kind of advertising-based usage. This could very well be fair use. But the reality is, we know what's going on here, and Venkat was driving at this. This guy is hoping to get anything that might hold up the delay of the release of the movie, at which point then the producers are willing to write very large checks to get the movie back on track. So this looks like the kind of thing that's a hold-up game, try and stop the process using legal tools, and then try and get the producers to buy back the right to keep going on the track they were on. In the end, it strikes me as unlikely we'll ever truly find out the legal merits of this claim. One way or another, either the complaint's going to go away if the guy realizes he doesn't have the rights or can't win, or they're just going to write a check to say, get out of our way, let us go make millions of dollars from this movie, and we'll throw you a bone just to get you out of our hair, or out of our face, I guess.
Very well said. Oh, well, go ahead.
If I can just add a quick point to this, I think in reading the news reports, I saw that he had documentation that I guess he must have signed with Mike Tyson that said he retained the rights to the art, and I'm wondering if he granted Mike Tyson a license to walk around and publicly exhibit it, or what was going on there. I mean, it almost seems like a joke, but You know?
That was my next question. I was going to ask kind of as a hypothetical based now upon reality. If a tattoo artist tattoos a copyrighted work onto someone's face, assuming there is no actual license, what kind of implied license is imparted to the person who's receiving the tattoo to use that work?
I guess I would. Go ahead, Eric. What do you think?
Well, we actually had this issue, and I'm trying to remember the basketball player. The name has escaped me just at the moment.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh.
Ran into this issue a couple of years ago. I want to say it was maybe Rasheed Wallace, if I'm remembering correctly now, who had very distinctive tattoos and was trying to commercialize them, and the tattoo artist was making similar noises. I have no answer for you. The law professor says those who are getting tattoos should negotiate the IP rights with their tattoo artist in advance, and not only get the consent to display it on themselves, but to allow others to replicate it if they're emulating or pretending to be the other person as well. So any of you out there who want to do your copyright license with a tattoo artist, one of the three of us will be delighted to help you negotiate that.
Right on. I'm sure that all the athletes that getting tattoos are going to be right on that. So, well, let's. We need to take a quick break. Like I said, I'm filling in for Denise this week, but she is with us not only in spirit but also in a pre-recorded message from one of our sponsors, Squarespace. So let's take a quick break, and we'll get back and we'll talk about the TWiT terms of service modification. So Venkat, be ready after this quick message.
Hi, folks. It's me. Hope you're enjoying the show. I know you're in good hands and you're enjoying this great panel. I'm here to say thank you to one of our sponsors for the show, and that's Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to create a high-quality website or blog. I use Squarespace. I absolutely love it. It is really the best way to publish a site on the web because it marries everything that's good about blogging software and everything that was good to begin with about posting and publishing websites. You can do as full-featured a site as you want, and yet have all the simplicity of the UI for managing a blog. It's easy to use UI, just makes it a joy to put up whatever kind of site you want. It can be as simple or as complicated, as many pages as you'd like. It's optimized for both beginners and CSS experts, so whatever your level of comfort with the web, Squarespace has got you covered. Hundreds of design templates to choose from, and you can customize any of the designs to fit your needs. There are beautiful iPhone and iPad apps for updating your blog or site on the go, online resources, and a special support team to give you personal help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All-inclusive service, it includes several modules to build your website, the blog module, which includes import and export, and support for WordPress, Blogger, Movable Type, and TypePad. That means that if you're presently using one of those platforms and you'd like to just try out something new, it's really, really easy to move your entire site or blog over into Squarespace. And should you decide after your free trial that you don't like Squarespace, well, you can move it right back on out of there again. Or after you've been using Squarespace for a really, really long time, it's very easy to just move your blog elsewhere should you decide to do that sometime down the road. There's a form builder. You can collect email addresses and other information from site visitors. And there is a Flickr photo display. You can choose the thumbnail or slideshow view. There's a Twitter widget. You can display tweets on your site in a customizable and great-looking format. There are social media buttons to connect your website visitors to your networks on Facebook and Twitter. There's Google Maps and more. The website tracking tells you how many times your site is viewed, and there's a built-in search engine optimizer. There's permission access handling, cloud architecture for speed and site stability. Please use Squarespace for all your website needs. Build it, host it, and update it anytime. For your free 14-day trial, go to squarespace.com/TWiL. Sign up for a free account. There's no credit card needed. Just try it out and start building your website. And after you try it out, be sure to check out their annual plans for a savings of up to 20% off. That's squarespace.com/TWiL, TWiL. Thank you so much, Squarespace, for your support of This Week in Law. And now, back to Evan and the panel. See you.
So, TwitPic, one of the favorite third-party applications to take advantage of the Twitter ecosystem, and what it allows you to do is to upload a photo to the web and put out a tweet that links all your followers to that photo. Has had some issues with copyright and the ownership of the digital photos in the past, and it has modified its terms of service to address some of these thorny issues. Venkat, you wrote a great post on the blog this past week about this story. What can you tell us about the issue, and how has it been resolved, and what still needs to be worked out? What's going on here?
Well, a quick piece of background on the TwitPic terms of service, and that's that there was a dispute last year between a photographer and a photo agency, AFP, around Haiti earthquake photos. And the photographer claimed that AFP downloaded these photos that were very iconic photos and reproduced them and sublicensed them through its network. And AFP came back and said, well, the terms of service of Twitter or TwitPic grant us an implied license to exploit photographs that are posted to the service. And the court disagreed with that argument and rejected AFP's assertions. And that was last year. So recently, in May, I think last week, TwitPic changed its terms of use, and the revised terms of use were somewhat confusing, and they purported to restrict users from granting a license to agencies, photo agencies, and other entities who would commercialize these photos. Now, someone pointed out that this restriction only applied to photos that were removed from TwitPic, but that seemed, I'm curious about what the intent of TwitPic was in including this restriction in there. And so there was a hue and cry over this, and I think everybody rightly saw this as a power grab on the part of TwitPic, and TwitPic revised its terms again in response to the user outcry and took out this provision which said that users who upload pictures to TwitPic could no longer license to certain third parties these pictures for removal from TwitPic. Now, what's interesting about that is shortly after TwitPic revised its terms of use and announced this in a blog post, there was a news release from a news organization, or it might have been a photo agency, that said that we are the exclusive agency of record for TwitPic, and we're going to be the sole point of distribution for pictures uploaded to TwitPic. Now, what was unclear from the news reports, and what remains unclear, is whether TwitPic is actually going to go back to users when they license the pictures to this agency, or whether TwitPic can just funnel the photos to the agency. And we all know that many newsworthy or just valuable photographs are uploaded to TwitPic. And I think the big question is TwitPic exploiting or licensing these photos, gaining revenue, and are the users going to see in any of this revenue? And I think one of the big lessons, I mean, this is almost obvious at this point, one of the big lessons from this episode is that giving advance notice and clear notice to users is extremely valuable. And I'm a user of TwitPic. I don't really post anything of value on there. I mean, just kind of my day-to-day pictures that I upload to Twitter. But I think an email or a message that they would send you to say, hey, we're changing the terms, here's what's going to happen going forward, and you have a week to do what you want or take your pictures off, would have engendered a tremendous amount of goodwill. And I think a lot of people would have just said, okay, whatever, we're not that concerned about it. So I think even the revised terms don't make completely clear what role TwitPic plays, but perhaps the bigger lesson is that when you're changing user terms, it pays to give notice. And I think Scribd and other companies have learned this lesson the hard way, and this is just another example in a similar circumstance.
Jonathan, what do you think about that? The tactful way that a platform should notify its users that its terms of service have changed, especially if it's something problematic. What's the right thing to do?
I think Venkat hit the nail on the head on that one. Email everyone involved, let them know the terms have changed. Try to explain the terms in plain English. This is a problem I seem to encounter all the time. People who are relatively legal savvy, who are pretty smart individuals, but their eyes kind of glaze over when they see a terms of service, and I can't really blame them. I mean, we're all adults here. I think we're all going to have to admit that at least once in our lives, we've accepted the terms of service without really reading it or even really skimming it. So, they need to put it out there, explain it, put it in simple, easy to understand terms so that people can make informed decisions. And I think if they did that, it would, like Venkat was saying, it would engender a lot of goodwill. It would help people make informed decisions, and it would prevent these kinds of uproars and these kinds of, incidents of quote-unquote confusion.
Eric, do you know anything that the law has said as to why not only would that engender a bunch of goodwill, but also might make sense from a legal standpoint? Anything along those lines?
Well, there's the general issue of how you amend a user agreement to change the rules. And my position is that if you want to take more stuff from people, you need their opt-in consent. You can't simply have something that says, we can change the rules by posting on our website, take more stuff and never tell you. But I actually would like to put all that aside, I think, for this discussion, because that issue hasn't really come up here, although I could see someone who was really angry with TWiP raising whether they properly amended it. I think the bigger issue here is how did they screw it up so badly, given that they knew there was an issue with their initial version, they launched a new version, and then 2 days later they had to fix the new version. I don't understand how that went so wrong. It started, I think Venkat's coverage got me wondering, maybe this wasn't simply an accident. Maybe they didn't just get sloppy in their drafting. Maybe they were trying to do more than just fix a problem. And I think the broader lesson is for companies that are changing it, as Jonathan was saying, be super clear, and plain English always is the best.
Good deal. Let's switch gears a little bit and go from digital images to music online. You'll remember earlier this year, just within the last couple of months, within the last month maybe or so, I've lost track of time, Amazon launched its cloud player service, which is excellent. Have any of you used Amazon's cloud service to store and retrieve your music? Eric, have you used it?
I haven't, sorry.
What about you, Venkat?
My problem is that they only allow 20 gigabytes of storage, and I have more than that. So I can't actually upload everything I've got on my hard drive, so it's not a complete solution for me.
What about you, Venkat? Have you tried it?
I have not. I have not either. Not yet.
Jonathan?
I've actually got it up and I'm using it. Well, I'm not listening to it right now, but it's up in another tab right now, so yes.
Yeah. I finally tried it. We're talking about the Amazon cloud player here, and it really kind of changes things really dramatically. Making it. My initial thought after I had done this, and I think I mentioned this on previous episode, is it seems that we're moving into an era where it's becoming more clear how the amount of storage that you have on your local device is becoming largely irrelevant as things move to the cloud. That's such a cliche to talk about things moving to the cloud, but it looks like Google is doing just that with the music service that it announced this past week will be available in private beta. And like Amazon, they are doing this, here's the copyright angle of this. They're doing this, notwithstanding the absence of a clear licensing arrangement with the major music labels. So I wonder, how we're supposed to think about this, whether this is, foolish bravado on the part of Amazon and now on the part of Google, or whether they're doing the right thing, kind of charging boldly in charting these uncharted waters when it comes to the copyright rights that should attach to music that a person has bought and just wants to store and be able to retrieve from the cloud. Jonathan, what are your thoughts on how smart Google now is entering into a space like this way?
I read an article on TechCrunch not that long ago. The owner of MP3 Tunes, which we'll remember was it still is an MP3 locker site similar to these, but goes back much further and is currently in litigation with the RIAA and the various labels individually, I believe. He had kind of a sort of an insider's perspective as to the demands that the record labels were trying to put on these type of MP3 locker sites, and some of it was seemingly insane stuff, like you couldn't upload MP3s without a digital receipt. Well, that creates a problem for everyone that rips their CDs or buys MP3s from Amazon, because there's two formats there that you don't get a digital receipt. So there were problems like that. There were issues like you could only, one label said you could only upload from one computer. There were all these restrictions, and basically I think, Google got tired after years of negotiation of pulling its hair out, and they decided to move forward. And yes, there's some thorny legal issues. The biggest right now that I see is whether or not this type of streaming from one individual uploading and listening to it again, whether that constitutes a public performance of the work. But I think they just decided that if they're going to go into this, they have to go now. They can't wait for the record labels to, come around. They have to move forward and just drag them kicking and screaming, I guess.
Eric, let me run something pretty radical by you, see what you think of it here. Suppose that the record labels were somehow able to figure out what music users had put up into the cloud, whether it be on Google's servers or onto Amazon servers, and then they started sending massive numbers of DMCA takedown notices. Would that be the sign of Armageddon, or how actually would that play out, or how should it play out if there was something strange? Imagine, go back to 2007, maybe 2006 or 2007, before Viacom sued YouTube, and it was sending something like 100,000 takedown notices to YouTube about copyrighted works there. Well, how should that play out if that radical scenario were to come about?
Great question, and one that I'm not sure we'll ever get to. One of the questions that I've been scratching my head about is how the record labels would find out what users had uploaded into Google's storage. The way that Google's offering up the functionality, it's supposed to be individual to the user. So there shouldn't be a public playlist, for example. And so I'm actually not clear how the issue could even come up, where the record label knows what any individual user has. Were we to get that far, I would imagine that Google would handle a takedown notice like it would any other. It tends to pull files pretty freely in response to the 512c3 takedown notices. But I could see Google saying that we really think our users have such a strong fair use right to simply store their music in the cloud on an archival basis that they might force that issue. Certainly, if I were a record label and Google didn't honor the 512c3 notice, I'd be pretty nervous about suing my users on this one. It's certainly not even as good a case as the peer-to-peer file sharing cases the record labels bought, and those didn't turn out so great for the record labels anyway.
Venkat, Amazon was the first one to be bold about this, and they're there in your backyard in Seattle. Is it just something in the water that makes them bold like this that you share, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that if a takedown was issued and Google took down the file, I wonder if there's an opportunity to, file a wrongful takedown type claim. I haven't thought it through, but I'll just throw that out there. And I'm beyond what's been discussed already. I can't delve into the legal issues, but I think I come back to LimeWire and think, here's an instance of legitimate companies that are launching this service, and the record companies the rubber is really just hitting the road as far as what they're going to do with their future, and are they going to enter into deals with these companies, or ultimately I think that's the direction music and everything is heading in. So it'll be an interesting couple of years to see what happens.
Yeah, and that's a great segue. We should take another quick break here to have Denise chime in with a word from our other sponsor for episode 111, which is Netflix. So take it away, Denise.
Hi, folks. It's Denise Howell, and I'm here to thank our sponsor, Trim Tonic. Trim Tonic is a natural appetite suppressant tonic that takes the edge off of being hungry. I've ordered it. I've been drinking it for the last few days. You don't want to drink more than 1 or 2 a day. That's what they recommend. It's got a really nice taste. It's sort of a sour berry flavor, and it really does take the edge off of being hungry. It also gives you a bit of a jolt, although it uses no stimulants to get this effect. There's no caffeine, no hoodia. Instead, they use active ingredients, some of which have clinical studies showing their ability to curb appetite and reduce body fat. The 3 main ingredients are Acaranthus aspera and Ervingia gabonensis. These are seed extracts, and they're both tropical plants used in India and Africa for curbing appetites. The 3rd ingredient is cocoa leaf extract, and you can rest easy on that one. When people hear cocoa leaf, they tend to think of cocoa tea or other less legal substances, but the cocoa that they use in this product has been decocainized, and it's just left with its appetite curbing effect. Just as coffee can be decaffeinated, you can do the same with cocoa, I guess, and that's what they've done here. So if you want to check it out too, if perhaps you feel like you could use some help on that portion control part of your diet, then visit braintonic.com for more information. Enter the coupon code TWIT for a 20% discount. Thank you, Brain Tonic. Back to the show.
Hey,
yes, Eric.
Before we segue, can I just make one more point on the Google Cloud Storage?
Yeah, Colin, why don't we just tee it up? It's something that you want to say, like, on the record, right, Eric?
Yes.
Like, as part. Okay, good. Okay, so Eric, anything more to say about cloud storage?
The fact that Google launched such a stripped down functionality, I think, is a really dramatic example of how copyrights are interfering with technological innovation. There's so much more that Google could have done with a cloud storage functionality that it didn't, and they didn't because of the problems negotiating with the labels. And I think all of us might be the lesser for it. So there's, I think, a lot of rhetoric about how copyright interferes with innovation. Sometimes I think that rhetoric is overblown, but I think here we have a nice dramatic example of how copyright actually did chill innovative new services.
That's great. That's great. Well, we've been talking a lot about the copyright. Essentially, everything we've talked about so far in the episode has been about copyright. So I'd like to before we move off of that topic, just cover one thing real quickly that was in our show notes for today. And this I don't think this is anything necessarily new, but it's something that just came to my attention this past week. The SIIA, the Software and Information Industry Association, along with the BSA, the Business Software Alliance, these organizations that take it upon themselves to, they're in cooperative arrangements with the major software developers, manufacturers, and suppliers to go out and enforce the copyright rights in this software against companies who have loaded unauthorized copies or unlicensed copies of software onto their systems. And so in our show notes for today, we've got this page that talks about, or it essentially encourages people to report piracy. It often comes up where it's a former employee that leaves a company and knows that there was unlicensed software on the company system, and it reports it to the SIIA or the BSA. And the thing that is really particularly intriguing that I want to get your guys' take on here is the fact that there is this reward system for reporting piracy. If you click through and read the FAQs on the website SIIA.net, the Software and Information Industry Association, there's an anti-piracy FAQ, and if you scroll down, there's a little chart that promises rewards to those who rat out instances of piracy, so that if there is a settlement extracted, anywhere from $10 million to $20 million, over $20 million, the one who reported the piracy can get $1 million. This just seems really radical. I mean, it's a wonderful incentive, I guess, to have folks turn state's evidence, if you will, one way of putting it. So I'm wondering what your reactions from this approach are. Venkat, what do you think about how this fits into a copyright enforcement scheme?
It's interesting. I don't think it necessarily raises any legal issues. I mean, I think you could get into trouble where conceivably if a departing employee reports their employer but then provides additional information, maybe there's an argument out there for some sort of tortious interference argument or something like that. But from a legal standpoint, it doesn't seem to raise any immediate red flags. Whenever I hear about these rewards programs, whether it's for taxpayers or there's other categories of false mark. I don't know what all the different categories of lawsuits out there. I always wonder whether people actually take advantage of them, and or is it just like a publicity ploy that's just out there. So I don't know the answer to that. It looks interesting to me. I question ultimately how effective it'll be, but we'll see.
Jonathan, do you like a setup like this? Does this make good sense to you?
Well, I have to agree with Venkat. I don't think this is so much about encouraging people to report piracy, but so much more about making businesses that might be tempted to, engage in illegal copying, making them think twice, saying, hey, there's a lot of incentive out there for someone to report us, and we got all these people around, and someone can be kind of mad. Maybe it's, cheaper and easier just to go ahead and buy the software. But that being said, I have to say, I think this would look a lot better if they did it in the form of the old Wild West posters, wanted, dead or alive, and then put the reward at the bottom. I think that'd make a much better message than a little chart buried in an FAQ. But that's my design speaking up.
Hey, Jonathan, I think we now know what you should do to replace that pirate flag behind you.
I know. I think I'm onto something. I think you guys are onto something here, honestly.
That's great. That's great. Well, let's move away from.
I'm sorry, Evan. Before we move on, I just want to note Mike Matzik of TechDirt has been tracking some of these reward programs, and he keeps trying to find examples of where the reward payers have actually paid out the maximum dollars amount offered up, and I believe he's never found an example of that. So maybe that's because the stars never aligned, or maybe it's that these reward programs maybe are trying to sound bigger than they really are.
Yeah, and that comes honestly as no big surprise to me. My concern has always been that there's just a really weird mixture of incentives here. If I get the sense that oftentimes the one who reports these things is the same person who was responsible for loading them onto the system when he or she was an employee, and that just to me puts up a really inherent conflict of interest that is not healthy for anyone. That's my big concern.
Hey,
sounds like a good deal to me.
I have one quick thought here that just ran across my brain.
Yes.
Here in New Orleans, they're running a big billboards all over the place for this, a big program saying report, tip the police, one violent crime, one arrest equals $5,000. So, I turn in a murderer, I get $5,000. I think I can make a lot more money just turning in corporate pirates, judging from this chart here. I mean, wouldn't take much.
Right. Especially if you work in their IT department at one point.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm thinking about getting a job in IT somewhere. There's got to be a good payout here somewhere.
Right. Well, like I said, we've been talking about copyright the whole show. We've got a few minutes left to talk, before we get into Futures in Biotech, which is coming up after this episode of TWiL. Did you see the article in the show notes for today from Fred Wilson's blog over there about an explanation or possible explanation for the recent Sony privacy breach debacle being in retaliation for Sony and the government going after George Hotz, the alleged PlayStation 3 hacker, so vigorously, and it being in retaliation for that. Wondering what your guys' reaction is to the idea that this, rather than what, as Fred says here, being a question of whether, this is right, whether the prosecution and the litigation against this initial hacker is right or wrong, and whether or not hacking is right or wrong, kind of transcending that question, whether or not this is just a reality of life that we have dealing with hacker culture. What's your reaction? Is that a good and healthy view of reality and how we should think about these things? Eric, what's your take on this?
Let me deflect to Venkat. I'd like to hear his thoughts.
I'm retaliatory or alleged retaliatory instances of hacking just kind of sound scary to me, and it always happens in a very erratic and unpredictable way. So I will just say that I hope I'm never the victim of something like that. I doubt I will be. Cross my fingers, but it just seems too unpredictable to really come back and say, well, in response to this, we should, take a different tack on on these types of prosecutions.
Jonathan, anything?
I don't know if I like using the word healthy, but I think what you said earlier was a pretty accurate depiction. It's the nature of the anonymous nature of the internet, and anonymous in that sense. I don't necessarily mean anonymous, the group. I mean anonymous as in, the lack of a solid identity. Retaliatory hacking is commonplace. It's not just for these types of legal campaigns. It's when you express an opinion people don't like, people get hacked. When you do just about anything, someone with any amount of computer skill online, it seems like this type of thing is getting more and more common. It's more and more frustrating, but it just highlights the need for proper security and for companies like Sony to be thinking about these things in advance and to be aware of these possibilities so they can prepare for them and hopefully deflect them.
Yeah, and so what it kind of takes me back to what you just said, Venkat, about fearing or being concerned at least about being the target of one of these things. And I think we should just all establish for the record here that Venkat is an upstanding guy and would never have.
If I can just add one quick point, and that is that I think in response to this incident, there was a class action lawsuit filed, and query as to what it means that Sony was the alleged victim of retaliatory hacking, as far as the information might be put out there, but is that the same as somebody coming along and stealing it and misusing it? So I'll just throw that out there as a final thought.
Well, I mean, and I could transform that into a question that raises an issue that I know, Eric, you've been thinking and writing about a lot, and that's the question of damages. Let's focus on the damages that one would allege in a lawsuit against Sony for having his or her information being, within the set of data that is obtained by a hacker, whether it's shared or not. What do you want to say about the trends that you've been seeing about how courts treat this idea of whether or not a victim of a data breach has an actionable remedy, and whether or not there really is something that the law should do about that? Anything you want to say along those lines?
Yeah, two observations. First of all, the FTC has been interested in data breaches and treating them as a form of false advertising and seeking out their own bus. I think that the FTC has a pretty generous definition of what constitutes false advertising when they're trying to go after data breaches. But that may be the more likely scenario here of a punishment that sticks. In terms of the class action lawsuit, many of the judges are looking for some evidence of actual damage that the individuals whose data was grabbed have suffered. And the plaintiffs have a really hard time putting that together. They can put together stories that says, I was promised X, I got Y, and I'm in fear of Z. But the fear of Z doesn't support a legal cause of action in many cases. And so the judges have really been scrutinizing the requirement of plaintiffs having suffered some form of harm before they let these cases go forward. Venkat just posted on another one of those cases this morning.
All right. Well, very good. We got to finish up here in just a few minutes. We got time to talk about one or two more things. There was this situation over in the High Court in the UK. I'm not sure exactly which court it was in here, but there was a Huffington Post article about this. And Eric, this is right in your bailiwick because this has to do with identity and the ability for people to say things online and either speak anonymously or honestly or both of those things here. But what we have here,
Evan, just on that, you might direct the question elsewhere. It's possible I'm going to end up being involved in that case, so. I'm probably going to watch my words.
Oh, good. We'll toss it out anyway. I'll go ahead and kind of explain what it is here. This American billionaire, Louis Bacon, has filed a lawsuit over in the UK, and it's a libel lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit. And we know that there are the special issues that arise, under UK law, which differentiate it from the US law. But it sounds like he has gotten an order from the court which directs Wikipedia, WordPress, presumably WordPress.com, and the Denver Post to turn over the identities of certain online commenters that allegedly posted these defamatory statements about him online. So we're presented here with a question that puts us squarely, in contradiction with the general note with how the UK is going about this and the sensibilities that we may have here in the United States, the protection of the identity from disclosure, the protection of the identity from disclosure in response to a court order like this. And I'm wondering, Venkat, then, since Eric should not discuss this given his potential involvement, do you have any reaction to this order from the UK court that you'd like to share with us?
Well, so I think recently the Speech Act was signed into law, and this is intended to prevent forum shopping in libel and defamation cases. And the Speech Act also says that any foreign decision that's not consistent with Section 230 can't be enforced in the U.S. And so the question is, obviously, third parties like Wikipedia and Automatic, the plaintiff is not going to be able to sue them. But the question is do any procedural protections that are typically afforded to anonymous plaintiffs apply by virtue of the Speech Act? And is the plaintiff in this case filing a lawsuit in the UK to try to get at the identities of people that he could not have obtained under US law? From my initial glance, it seems like he would have had a tough time showing, or would not have had an easy time showing that he was entitled to the identities and would have had to jump through a bunch of hoops, and I'm guessing he didn't have to do that in the UK. So the big question is whether these companies are going to comply, or whether they're just going to say, well, that's great, if you want the names, you got to come to the US and get a US court order in order to get the names. So definitely a very interesting issue.
Right, great. Well, I tell you what, I would love to spend the rest of the afternoon talking with you guys about all this stuff. This has been a great conversation, but we've got to wrap up here. Our time together has come to an end. Let me go around and get any final words and say goodbye to you all. Eric, thanks a lot for being here. Where are you online? Where can we track you down?
I am at www.ericgoldman.org. I run a blog at blog.ericgoldman.org, and I'm Eric Goldman at Twitter. And Evan, thank you very much for filling in for Denise. You didn't crack any Orange County jokes or any Cal Berkeley jokes, so we definitely noticed the change.
Oh, good. Yeah, that does make it easier when you when they're not always set up so great. So yeah, that's great. Well, it's been great talking with you as always. Venkat, tell us where we can find you online.
Well, typically I blog at Professor Goldman's blog at, and he already mentioned the domain name, and Twitter is also where I can be frequently found, and my username is @Balasubramani. I've been advised numerous times to change that, but for some stubborn reason, I'm going to stick to it, and that's where you'll find me.
Yeah, it sure is distinctive. I hope you stay with it. Jonathan, great to talk with you. I guess what we're about to learn is the correct spelling of plagiarism. How do we track you down?
You can find me at plagiarismtoday.com, plagiarism today.com, and Plagiarism Today is also my Twitter handle. Just seek me out at those places if you're interested in tracking me down, but please don't hack me. That's all I ask.
Right on. You don't deserve it either. So, yeah. Well, great. Thanks a lot for joining me, folks. Tune in next week at the same time. We will be here with a great panel of guests on episode 112, and that is it for episode 111. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.